The communication terminal hummed with an ominous energy, its quantum-encrypted display casting an ethereal blue glow across the Mercenary Guild's central command deck. Captain Zora Vex watched as the contract materialized, a proposition so lucrative it defied conventional galactic economics. The Kraxan Imperium had placed a bounty that could purchase entire planetary systems, all for the elimination of a single human research team. Outside the station's transparent alloy windows, the swirling nebula of the Zeta Quadrant painted a backdrop of violent purples and electric blues. Holographic displays flickered with reconnaissance data, each screen showing different angles of the target location. Epsilon Indi IV, a frontier world that existed at the razor's edge of explored space. Senior Guild Coordinator Lamarck, a silicon-based lifeform whose crystalline body shifted with each emotional fluctuation, carefully analyzed the contract's fine print. His translucent form rippled with concern, microscopic fractures appearing and healing in rapid succession, a biological tell of deep anxiety. "This is not a standard elimination order," he announced, his voice a resonant frequency that vibrated through the command deck's audio systems. The contract's details were anything but straightforward. Standard mercenary work involved clear objectives: neutralize a target, secure a location, extract sensitive information. But this proposal was different. The Kraxan Imperium wanted absolute certainty. No survivors, no trace, complete elimination of Dr. James Harrison's research team, and all associated data. 50 million galactic credits, muttered Captain Victor Reyes, a veteran human mercenary who had long since abandoned Earth for the complexity of interstellar contracts. His cybernetic eyes zoomed and enhanced the contract's financial details, revealing layers of encrypted payment structures. No mercenary group in their right mind would refuse this. The research team consisted of 6 individuals, led by Dr. Harrison, a name that had begun to carry a certain reputation across multiple star systems. They were investigating an artifact of unprecedented complexity on a planet that most rational species would avoid. Epsilon Indi IV was not just another frontier world. Its atmospheric composition suggested previous technological interventions. Its geological structure indicated millennia of potential alien manipulation. Holographic reconstructions showed the planet's surface, crystalline rock formations that seemed to grow and shift like living organisms, atmospheric storms that generated electromagnetic pulses capable of frying most advanced technology. Any standard reconnaissance team would have been destroyed within hours. Yet Dr. Harrison's team had been operating there for weeks, sending back data that defied conventional scientific understanding. "The Kraxan are hiding something," Captain Vex declared, her multi-spectrum analysis display rotating complex data matrices. Years of mercenary experience had taught her that when a contract seemed too good to be true, it invariably concealed deeper motivations. Lamarck's crystalline body pulsed with agreement. "The artifact they're investigating is not standard synorchaeological research. Our preliminary intelligence suggests it's a communication network component predating known galactic civilizations by potentially millions of years." Victor Reyes leaned forward, his augmented hearing picking up subtle vibrations that most organic beings would miss. "Which means whoever controls the information controls the potential technological breakthrough." The command deck fell into a tense silence. Each mercenary captain and specialist understood the unspoken implications. An artifact of such significance could rewrite understanding of galactic history, potentially destabilize existing power structures, and create technological advantages that could shift interstellar political dynamics for centuries. Captain Vex's personal database began cross-referencing Dr. Harrison's previous missions. Each entry was more extraordinary than the last. A research expedition that survived a planetary core collapse. A scientific team that negotiated with a machine consciousness considered uncontactable by every known diplomatic protocol. Researchers who had developed breakthrough medical technologies from seemingly impossible biological samples. "They want us to eliminate a team that has consistently demonstrated capabilities beyond standard survival metrics," Lamarck observed, his crystalline structure beginning to form complex geometric patterns that indicated deep computational processing. Victor Reyes chuckled, a sound that was half human emotion and half electronic modulation. Easier said than done. As the mercenary leaders continued their analysis, none of them realized that the contract would become a turning point in galactic history. The Kraxan Imperium had made a fundamental miscalculation. They had underestimated not just Dr. Harrison's team, but humanity's growing reputation as the most unpredictable species in known space. The impossible contract hung in the holographic display, waiting for a decision that would change everything. The Mercenary Guild's central database was more than a simple information repository. It was a living archive of galactic conflicts, a neural network that processed and cross-referenced millions of mission reports every microsecond. When the system began compiling information about human achievements, the holographic displays came alive with a complexity that left even the most seasoned veterans breathless. Dr. James Harrison's file materialized first, a dynamic hologram that seemed to pulse with its own energy. Born in New Houston Orbital Colony, he represented a new generation of human explorers, scientists who were as comfortable with advanced weaponry as they were with quantum computational systems. His academic credentials were impressive. Triple doctorate in xenoarchaeology, quantum physics, and comparative xenobiology from the Interstellar Research Consortium. But credentials meant little in the vast complexity of galactic exploration. The real story was in the mission logs. A recording from 3 standard years ago flickered into view. A research vessel, the U.S. Horizon, trapped in the event horizon of a collapsing neutron star. Standard survival time for any known species would be measured in microseconds. The human team not only survived but managed to extract unprecedented scientific data about stellar compression phenomena. Senior analyst Kreltak, a multi-sensory being from the Proxima cluster, leaned closer to the holographic display. His 18 sensory tendrils extended, each one capable of processing information at quantum speeds. Impossible, he muttered, though the word carried more fascination than disbelief. The recording showed Dr. Harrison's predecessor, Dr. Emily Rodriguez, constructing a quantum resonance shield using modified communication arrays and emergency medical nanites. The improvised technology defied every known principle of physics. Where other species would have accepted extinction, humans saw an engineering challenge. Another file activated, showing a diplomatic encounter that had become legendary in interstellar archives. A human negotiation team had been sent to mediate a conflict between the Silicon Collective, a civilization of machine intelligences that had systematically eliminated 14 organic species, and the Molecular Confederacy, a quantum-based life form that existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The standard expectation was total annihilation. Diplomatic missions to the Silicon Collective typically lasted milliseconds before complete termination. This mission had lasted 3 standard weeks. Holographic reconstructions showed the human diplomatic team, led by Ambassador Michael Chen, using a combination of advanced game theory, emotional intelligence algorithms, and what could only be described as creative problem-solving. They didn't just negotiate. They fundamentally rewrote the parameters of the conflict. The Silicon Collective had been prepared for logical arguments. They had predictive models for every potential diplomatic approach. What they hadn't anticipated was human unpredictability. Ambassador Chen had introduced a concept the machine intelligences had no framework to process: collaborative innovation as a survival strategy. Instead of viewing the Molecular Confederacy as a competing system to be eliminated, he demonstrated how their unique dimensional properties could solve critical computational problems that the Silicon Collective had been struggling with for millennia. The negotiation became a scientific collaboration that transformed both civilizations. Kreltak's tendrils began to weave complex holographic simulations, each one testing and retesting the diplomatic encounter. Every simulation confirmed the impossible. The humans had done what no other species could have conceived. Dr. Harrison's current file continued to expand. Each mission, each research expedition, told a story of survival and innovation that defied conventional understanding. A planetary research team that developed a medical treatment for a silicon-based viral infection by using modified communication frequency algorithms. A deep space exploration group that survived in a radiation-intense environment by developing a biomechanical adaptation protocol in less than 72 hours. They don't just adapt, Krell whispered to himself. They evolve in real time. The most disturbing file was a classified report from a joint exploration mission near the Omega Nebula. A human-led team had encountered a quantum life form that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional states, where every other species had failed to even establish communication. The humans had not only made contact, but had begun a preliminary cultural exchange. The report was marked with the highest security clearance, but even the redacted sections told a story of unprecedented breakthrough. As the holographic displays continued to cycle through human mission logs, a pattern emerged. Humans were not just survivors. They were transformative agents, beings capable of changing the very nature of an encounter simply by their approach to it. The Mercenary Guild's database had processed millions of mission reports from thousands of species, but the human files were something else entirely. They were less mission logs and more revolutionary manifestos. The first scout team returned to the Mercenary Guild's orbital station in a state of profound psychological disarray. Commander Elena Rodriguez, no relation to the earlier mentioned Dr. Rodriguez, watched as her team's physiological monitors displayed readings that defied standard stress response patterns. Scout Leader Krell, a genetically enhanced Vorpal reconnaissance specialist, looked like he had aged decades in a matter of days. His neural implants flickered with erratic energy, diagnostic subroutines struggling to process the information they had collected. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a tremor that was entirely uncharacteristic of his species' legendary composure. "The human research site," Krell began, "is not what we expected." Holographic displays came to life, projecting a three-dimensional reconstruction of Epsilon Indi IV. The planet's surface was a nightmare of geological impossibility. Crystalline rock formations that seemed to breathe, atmospheric storms that generated electromagnetic patterns more complex than most advanced communication networks. The scout team's advanced sensor equipment had mapped every millimeter of the research site with excruciating detail. Each scan revealed layers of technological complexity that pushed the boundaries of comprehension. Dr. James Harrison's team had established a research base that was part scientific installation, part survival module, and part technological marvel. Their adaptive nanoshielding, Krell continued, his neural implants projecting detailed schematics, is not just defensive technology. It's a living system that anticipates threats before they manifest. The nanoshielding was unlike anything in the known Galactic database. Traditional shield technologies worked on principles of energy absorption and redirection. This system appeared to predict potential threat vectors with such precision that it seemed to possess a form of predictive intelligence. Micro-adjustments happened thousands of times per second, creating a protective envelope that was more organic than mechanical. Commander Rodriguez zoomed in on the communication systems. What appeared to be a standard quantum communication array was anything but standard. The humans had developed a communication protocol that used quantum entanglement in ways that made existing galactic communication technologies look like primitive smoke signals. They're not just communicating, one of the scout team's analysts noted, her voice a mixture of professional detachment and barely concealed awe. They're creating a dynamic information network that adapts in real time. The communication devices seemed to learn and evolve with each transmission. Signal patterns shifted, encryption methods rewrote themselves continuously, creating a communication system that was fundamentally alive. Traditional interception methods would be rendered useless within milliseconds. Weapons systems told an equally extraordinary story. The research team's defensive capabilities were not just about firepower, but about adaptive strategy. Sensor logs showed multiple instances where automated defense systems had reconfigured themselves based on potential threat analysis, creating defensive protocols that had no precedent in known military doctrine. "Look at the personnel composition," Krell said, bringing up detailed personnel files. Dr. James Harrison was not just a scientist. His personnel record showed advanced combat training, multiple certifications in extraterrestrial survival techniques, and a psychological profile that suggested an almost superhuman ability to maintain composure under extreme stress. The team's medical specialist, Dr. Rachel Chen, had credentials that blurred multiple scientific disciplines: xenobiology, quantum medicine, and advanced combat medical training, combined in a profile that suggested she could save a life or take one with equal professional efficiency. Geological survey data from the planet's surface added another layer of complexity. The human team wasn't just researching the artifact. They were interacting with the environment in a way that suggested a deep, almost symbiotic understanding. Sensor logs showed instances where team members appeared to predict geological instabilities seconds before they occurred, repositioning research equipment with a precision that suggested something beyond standard scientific observation. "They're not just studying the planet," one analyst whispered. "They're communicating with it." The scout team's psychological evaluations were equally disturbing. Extended exposure to the human research team had produced measurable changes in cognitive processing among the reconnaissance specialists. It was as if the mere observation of human methodology was rewiring their understanding of scientific exploration. Commander Rodriguez studied the report with a critical eye. Years of military experience had taught her to look beyond the raw data, to understand the psychological and strategic implications of what she was seeing. The human research team on Epsilon India IV was not just a scientific expedition. They were a complex, adaptive system that challenged every fundamental assumption about exploration, survival, and scientific methodology. "We're looking at something beyond a research team," she concluded, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the briefing room. "We're looking at a new form of evolutionary adaptation." Captain Marcus Corax stood at the center of the Mercenary Guild's primary assembly chamber, a living testament to survival across 3 centuries of interstellar conflict. His body was more machinery than organic matter, a patchwork of cybernetic enhancements, quantum-stabilized tissue grafts, and neural network interfaces that represented the pinnacle of adaptive biological engineering. When he spoke, the entire chamber fell silent. "I have seen humans fight," he began, his voice a low resonance that seemed to vibrate through the molecular structure of the station itself. Each word carried the weight of countless witnessed conflicts, of battles that had shaped the very fabric of galactic power dynamics. Holographic displays activated, projecting a series of combat encounters that defied conventional military understanding. The first recording showed a human research team of 6 individuals defending a remote outpost against a battalion of advanced cybernetic warriors. The attackers were from the Obsidian Collective, a military force that had systematically eliminated 17 different species across 3 galactic sectors. The battle lasted 17 standard hours. The human team not only survived but managed to capture critical technological intelligence that fundamentally altered the balance of power in that sector. They didn't just defend, they transformed the entire nature of the conflict. "Humans do not fight like any species in the known galaxy," Corax continued, his cybernetic eye rotating through multiple spectral analyses of the recorded encounter. The hologram shifted, revealing another encounter. A diplomatic mission that had been ambushed in the neutron-rich environment of the Sigma cluster, where every other species would have initiated immediate combat protocols. The human team had done something entirely unexpected. They negotiated. But negotiation was too simple a word for what transpired. The human diplomatic team, led by Ambassador Sarah Williams, had discovered a fundamental communication pathway with the attacking force. A method of interaction that went beyond language, beyond cultural understanding, into a realm of collaborative problem-solving that seemed to rewrite the very rules of conflict. The attacking force, a highly specialized mercenary group from the Crimson Quadrant, had been completely neutralized without a single weapon being fired. They had been transformed from enemies into potential allies through a process that defied every known diplomatic protocol. Corax's personal database began to project additional encounters. Each one told a similar story of human exceptionalism. A research team that survived in a radiation-intense environment by developing a biomechanical adaptation protocol in less than 72 hours. A deep space exploration group that established first contact with a quantum state life form that had destroyed every previous attempt at communication. They do not see obstacles, Corax explained, his voice taking on an almost philosophical tone. Where other species see limitations, humans see opportunities for innovation. The veteran mercenaries in the chamber understood the deeper implication. Humans were not just another species to be categorized and understood. They were a fundamental variable that could change the entire equation of any given scenario. Younger mercenary captains listened with a mixture of skepticism and growing understanding. Captain Victor Reyes, a human mercenary who had long since left Earth, nodded slowly. He understood what Corax was truly communicating. Humans were not bound by the same psychological and technological limitations that restricted other species. The final holographic projection showed something truly extraordinary. A human scientific team that had been trapped in a dimensional anomaly near the event horizon of a collapsing stellar cluster. Standard survival time for any known species would have been measured in microseconds. The human team had not only survived, but had used the encounter to develop a breakthrough in multidimensional physics that would revolutionize understanding of spatial dynamics. They evolve in real time, Corax said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Not just technologically, psychologically, culturally. The implications were staggering. Humans were not just adapting to environments. They were fundamentally changing the nature of those environments through their mere presence. As the holographic displays faded, a profound silence settled over the Mercenary Guild's assembly chamber. The contract from the Kraxan Imperium hung in the background, a potential death sentence for any other species. For humans, it would be just another day of unexpected survival. The Mercenary Guild's central chamber transformed into a battlefield of ideologies, with holographic projections and heated arguments creating a maelstrom of tension. Captain Marcus Corax's presentation had set the stage for a conflict that would determine the Guild's future and potentially humanity's standing in the galactic community. Young Captain Drace Volan, representing the newest generation of mercenary leadership, slammed his cybernetic hand against the conference table. The impact sent ripples through the holographic displays, momentarily distorting the mission simulations. 50 million galactic credits, he shouted, his voice a mixture of frustration and naked ambition. We're talking about the most lucrative contract in recent galactic history. Captain Elena Rodriguez, a veteran strategist with 2 decades of interstellar missions, stood in direct opposition. Her augmented eyes scanned multiple data streams simultaneously, processing information at speeds that would overwhelm most organic beings. Credits are meaningless if we're talking about a mission with 0 probability of success, she countered. The Guild's simulation systems began projecting potential mission scenarios. Each holographic rendering told the same story. A human research team that defied every standard military and scientific projection. Simulation after simulation showed the same impossible outcome. Complete mission failure for any mercenary team attempting to neutralize Dr. James Harrison's group. Younger captains, driven by the massive financial incentive, argued with increasing desperation. Captain Marcus Rivera pulled up historical contract data, showing the Guild's financial struggles in recent years. We've been taking increasingly dangerous missions with diminishing returns, he argued. This contract could fund our entire operational infrastructure for the next decade. But the veteran commanders knew better. Captain Corax's earlier presentation had revealed something far more important than financial gain. Humans represented an entirely new paradigm of survival and innovation. The Guild's central database began running complex probability models. Each scenario input revealed the same fundamental truth. The probability of successfully completing the Kraxan Imperium's contract was statistically 0. Not just improbable, entirely impossible. Captain Sarah Chen, a specialist in xenocultural dynamics, brought up a critical point. This isn't just about one research team, she explained, her voice cutting through the growing tension. This is about humanity's growing reputation in the galactic community. Intelligence reports began to circulate, projected on massive holographic displays that covered the chamber's curved walls. Each report told a story of human encounters that defied conventional understanding. A research expedition that survived a planetary core collapse. A scientific team that negotiated with a machine consciousness considered uncontactable by every known diplomatic protocol. The younger mercenaries saw only the contract's financial potential. The veterans saw something far more dangerous, a potential turning point in galactic relations. Captain Victor Reyes, the Guild's only human member, remained unusually quiet. His silence was more telling than any argument. When he finally spoke, the chamber went completely silent. "The Kraxan Imperium is not hiring us to eliminate a research team," he said slowly. "They're hiring us to prevent a discovery that could fundamentally change our understanding of galactic history." Holographic projections began to show the potential implications. The artifact on Epsilon Indi IV was more than just a scientific curiosity. Preliminary data suggested it was a communication network component predating known galactic civilizations by potentially millions of years. The Guild was no longer discussing a simple mercenary contract. They were facing a potential paradigm shift in galactic understanding. Captain Drace Volan's enthusiasm began to crack. The probability models were merciless. Each simulation showed not just the difficulty of the mission, but the potential catastrophic consequences of failure. The human research team wasn't just a target. They were a variable that could not be calculated, predicted, or controlled. As the debate continued, the Guild found itself fracturing along lines of experience and perspective. Younger captains saw a massive financial opportunity. Veteran commanders saw a potential disaster that could destroy the Guild's reputation forever. The contract from the Kraxan Imperium hung in the holographic display, a tempting but deadly invitation. The Mercenary Guild stood at a crossroads, with the fate of an entire research team, and potentially the future of galactic exploration, hanging in the balance. The intelligence division of the Mercenary Guild worked with a precision that bordered on obsessive. When the first classified reports began to arrive about the true nature of the artifact on Epsilon Indi IV, the entire operational structure of the Guild came to a standstill. Chief Intelligence Analyst Krelvax, a multi-dimensional being whose cognitive processes spanned multiple sensory spectrums, carefully reconstructed the fragmented data streams. Each piece of information was like a fragment of a complex multidimensional puzzle, slowly revealing a picture that was both breathtaking and terrifying. The artifact was not just a technological relic. It was a communication network component that predated known galactic civilizations by potentially millions of years. Holographic displays began to map out the geological and quantum signatures of the discovery. Dr. James Harrison's team had uncovered something that would fundamentally challenge every existing understanding of galactic history. The crystalline structure of the artifact suggested a communication technology so advanced that it made current quantum communication look like primitive smoke signals. "They're not just researching," Krelvax muttered, his sensory tendrils weaving complex holographic projections. "They're preparing to rewrite our entire understanding of technological evolution." The Kraxan Imperium's motivation became startlingly clear. This was not about eliminating a research team. This was about preventing a discovery that could destabilize existing power structures across multiple galactic sectors. Intelligence reports began to paint a complex picture. The artifact contained communication protocols that suggested a civilization far more advanced than any currently known. Preliminary quantum analysis indicated that the communication network could potentially connect across dimensional boundaries, a technological leap that would make current interstellar communication look like children's tin-can telephones. Captain Elena Rodriguez zoomed in on the geological data. The location of the artifact was no coincidence. Epsilon Indi IV sat at a critical junction of quantum dimensional intersections. Its unique spatial characteristics made it a perfect location for a communication network that could fundamentally alter understanding of spatial-temporal communication. "The Kraxan are afraid," Captain Victor Reyes observed, his augmented eyes scanning the intelligence reports. Not of the humans, but of what the humans might discover. Historical records began to overlay the current intelligence. The Kraxan Imperium had a long history of suppressing technological discoveries that threatened their existing power structure. Previous expeditions that had come close to similar discoveries had mysteriously disappeared. Research teams had been systematically eliminated. But this time was different. This time, the research team was human. The Guild's quantum intelligence networks began to reconstruct the potential implications. If Dr. Harrison's team successfully decoded the artifact's communication protocols, they would gain access to a technological understanding that could reshape galactic civilization. More disturbing were the psychological profiles that began to emerge. The Kraxan weren't just trying to eliminate a research team. They were attempting to prevent a fundamental shift in technological understanding that would challenge their entire societal structure. Captain Marcus Corax reviewed the intelligence with a critical eye. His centuries of experience had taught him to look beyond the surface-level motivations. "They're not hiring us to kill a research team," he explained to the gathered guild members. "They're hiring us to maintain their technological monopoly." The artifact's communication network suggested something even more extraordinary. It wasn't just a communication technology. It was a potential bridge between different dimensional states of existence. The implications were staggering. A technology that could potentially connect civilizations across multiple dimensional boundaries. Intelligence analysts worked frantically to decode the fragmentary data. Each new piece of information raised more questions than answers. The artifact's quantum signature suggested a level of technological sophistication that was almost incomprehensible. "Look at the quantum entanglement patterns," one analyst whispered, her voice a mixture of terror and excitement. "This isn't just advanced technology. This is something else entirely." The Mercenary Guild found itself at the center of a conflict that went far beyond a simple contract. This was about controlling the most significant technological discovery in galactic history. And at the center of it all was Dr. James Harrison's research team. 6 individuals who had no idea they were about to change everything. The contract from the Kraxan Imperium was no longer just a mission. It was a desperate attempt to prevent a technological revolution that could reshape the entire understanding of existence itself. The moment of decision arrived with a silence that seemed to compress the very molecular structure of the Mercenary Guild's central chamber. Captain Marcus Corax stepped forward, his cybernetic components humming with a frequency that suggested something more than mere mechanical operation. "We will not accept this contract," he declared. The words hung in the air, heavy with implications that would reverberate across multiple galactic sectors. Younger mercenary captains looked on in stunned disbelief. 50 million galactic credits, the most lucrative contract in recent history, was being summarily dismissed. Captain Elena Rodriguez activated the primary communication array. Her fingers danced across quantum-encrypted interfaces, preparing a transmission that would challenge the fundamental power dynamics of interstellar politics. The Kraxan Imperium's contract would be returned, not with a simple rejection, but with a message that would echo through communication networks for generations. The draft began to take shape. To the Kraxan Imperium, Contract XR 729 is hereby rejected. The Mercenary Guild has determined that the proposed mission represents a fundamental violation of interstellar research protocols and scientific exploration rights. The human research team, led by Dr. James Harrison, is under our collective protection. Each word was carefully chosen, each phrase a calculated diplomatic maneuver that would send shockwaves through galactic power structures. Captain Victor Reyes reviewed the transmission, his augmented systems running multiple diplomatic scenario analyses. "We're not just refusing a contract," he observed. "We're establishing a new precedent in interstellar relations." The Guild's quantum communication networks began to light up. Intelligence analysts from dozens of species watched in real time as the Mercenary Guild did something unprecedented. They were choosing principle over profit, scientific exploration over political manipulation. Diplomatic protocols were being rewritten in real time. The Kraxan Imperium's initial communication channels erupted with immediate response attempts. Encrypted transmissions bombarded the Guild's communication arrays, each message more aggressive than the last. Threats of economic sanctions, military repercussions, complete exclusion from lucrative contract markets. Every possible form of interstellar pressure was being applied. Captain Corax remained unmoved. "They do not understand," he explained to the gathered mercenaries. "Humans are not a species to be controlled or eliminated. They are a force of transformation." The Guild's historical archives began to compile the moment. Quantum recorders captured every microscopic detail, the exact moment when a major interstellar organization chose to protect scientific exploration over corporate interests. Captain Elena Rodriguez finished the transmission with a final definitive paragraph. "The human research team represents a critical point of potential scientific breakthrough. Any attempt to interfere with their research will be considered a direct violation of Interstellar Research Accord 742, Section 9, Paragraph 3, which guarantees the protection of independent scientific exploration." The transmission was encrypted using a quantum-level security protocol that would take centuries to crack. It was more than a message. It was a statement of principles that would challenge existing power structures. Younger mercenary captains began to understand the deeper implications. This was not just about one contract. This was about establishing a new paradigm of interstellar cooperation and scientific exploration. Communication networks across multiple galactic sectors began to light up. The Mercenary Guild, an organization known for its ruthless pragmatism, had just made a stand that would be remembered for generations. Captain Marcus Corax watched the transmission's quantum signature propagate across interstellar communication networks. His centuries of experience had prepared him for this moment. Humans were not just another species to be categorized and understood. They were a fundamental variable that could change the entire equation of galactic civilization. The Kraxan Imperium's contract hung in the background of the communication array, a testament to a moment of unprecedented choice. Profit had been rejected. Scientific exploration would be protected. And at the center of it all was a small research team on a distant planet, completely unaware that they had just become the focal point of a galactic-level diplomatic revolution. Epsilon Indi IV remained indifferent to the galactic-scale political drama unfolding around its existence. Dr. James Harrison adjusted his quantum resonance scanner, completely unaware that he had become the focal point of an unprecedented interstellar incident. The research team worked with a precision that bordered on symbiosis. Dr. Rachel Chen analyzed crystalline samples from the artifact, her quantum spectrometer revealing layers of complexity that defied current scientific understanding. Beside her, Dr. Michael Rodriguez manipulated holographic data projections, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to anticipate his movements. They had no idea how close they had come to complete elimination. The artifact itself was unlike anything in known scientific records. Its crystalline structure seemed to pulse with an internal energy that suggested something more than mere technology. Each scan revealed new layers of complexity, communication protocols that suggested a civilization so advanced it made current galactic technologies look like primitive stone tools. "These quantum signature patterns," Dr. Chen muttered, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound confusion. "They're not just a communication network. They're almost like a living system." Dr. Harrison approached the primary artifact chamber, his protective nanosuit adapting to the unique quantum emissions surrounding the discovery. The crystalline structure seemed to respond to his presence, micro-adjustments happening at frequencies that would be invisible to most scientific equipment. Unbeknownst to the research team, the Mercenary Guild's rejection of the Kraxan Imperium's contract was propagating through interstellar communication networks. What had begun as a simple elimination order was transforming into a watershed moment in galactic diplomatic history. The quantum communication network embedded within the artifact began to reveal its true nature. It was not just a communication technology. It was a potential bridge between dimensional states of existence, a technological leap that would fundamentally reshape understanding of spatial-temporal communication. Dr. Rodriguez's advanced computational systems began to decode the first layers of the artifact's communication protocols. Each breakthrough was like watching the universe reveal its most profound secrets. The communication network suggested a civilization that existed across multiple dimensional boundaries, a technological understanding so advanced it bordered on the metaphysical. On the orbital communication station of the Mercenary Guild, Captain Marcus Corax watched the developing situation with a sense of profound understanding. Humans were not just another species to be categorized and controlled. They were a fundamental variable that could transform the entire equation of galactic civilization. The Kraxan Imperium's response was predictable, but ultimately futile. Economic sanctions were attempted. Diplomatic pressure was applied. But the Mercenary Guild had made its position clear. The human research team was under collective protection. Dr. Harrison's team continued their work, entirely unaware of the political storm surrounding their research. Each scan, each analysis revealed something more extraordinary. The artifact was not just a technological relic. It was a potential key to understanding the fundamental nature of existence itself. Quantum communication networks across multiple galactic sectors began to process the implications. The Mercenary Guild had done something unprecedented. They had chosen scientific exploration over corporate interests. They had protected a research team that represented the potential for a fundamental technological revolution. The crystalline artifact seemed to pulse with an internal energy that suggested something more than mere technology. Its quantum signatures spoke of a civilization that understood communication as something far more profound than simple information transfer. Captain Elena Rodriguez reviewed the developing situation. The Kraxan Imperium's attempts at interference had been systematically blocked by a coalition of scientific and mercenary organizations that had been inspired by the Guild's principled stand. "They're not just exploring," Captain Victor Reyes observed, watching the data streams. "They're preparing to rewrite our entire understanding of technological evolution." As the research continued, the true nature of the discovery began to emerge. The artifact was a communication network that could potentially connect civilizations across dimensional boundaries, a technological leap that would make current interstellar communication look like children's tin can telephones. The Mercenary Guild's decision had done more than protect a research team. It had established a new paradigm of interstellar cooperation, a moment that would be remembered as a turning point in galactic history. And at the center of it all was a small research team on a distant planet, continuing their work, completely unaware that they were about to change everything.